You know, for years, we've all been talking about the direction of DC's cinematic universe. After a lot of, well, let's call it creative inconsistency, a whole new era is here. Under James Gunn's leadership, the promise is a more connected, more cohesive world. And yeah, the first few projects have a lot of people excited. But what we're going to talk about today is the idea that the real test of this new DCU, its most important strategic move, isn't the new Superman. It's not even one of the projects Gunn is directing himself. It's Supergirl. And the reason why is the real twist here. It's got nothing to do with her powers or her popularity. It's all about the strategy her film represents. A huge, calculated risk that could either finally lock in DC's future or expose the single biggest weakness in their entire plan.
So this is the big question, right? How can one of the most exciting heroes in your entire lineup, a character everyone already knows and loves, also be your single biggest gamble? It sounds kind of contradictory, but it really gets to the heart of what it takes to build a cinematic universe that can actually go the distance. And to really get what's going on here, we gotta rewind a bit and look at how this new DC universe was built in the first place. Okay, let's jump into part 1, James Gunn's signature start. You just can't talk about the new DCU without talking about the creative mastermind behind it. When James Gunn and Peter Safran were put in charge of DC Studios, it was a massive signal that things were about to change. The old DCEU, I think we can all agree, was often criticized for not having a clear plan and for its tone being all over the place. The solution? Bring in a creator with a killer track record to build a clear, singular vision from scratch. And that strong start, that initial vision, it wasn't just a good idea. It was mission critical to get the ship pointed in the right direction.
So when James Gunn and Peter Safran took over, the strategy was simple and direct. James Gunn, the guy who made us fall in love with the Guardians of the Galaxy and gave us the Suicide Squad, would personally shape the first few projects. So he kicked things off with stuff he was writing or directing himself. You got the animated show Creature Commandos, and of course the big one, Superman. The goal here was crystal clear. After years of a universe that felt like a bunch of separate movies that didn't always talk to each other, DC needed what Marvel had in the beginning. One architect to set a consistent tone, a shared vibe, and a world that actually felt like one big connected story. And from everything we've seen so far, it's totally working. The buzz is real, and people are excited again. And what's at the heart of all this success? It's what everyone calls Gunn's signature style. It's this unique, creative fingerprint that fans absolutely love. It's that perfect mix of weird, off-the-wall humor, but then, wham, he hits you with these moments of real, surprising emotion. He has a gift for taking these misfit, broken characters and making you really genuinely care about them. That style became the bedrock of the new DCU, giving it an identity it desperately needed. But here's the funny thing, that very strength, that style that everybody loves, well, it also created a huge potential problem down the road.
And that leads us right into the core of our argument here in part 2, the risk of monotony. See, for a universe like this to last for 10, 20 years, it has to be able to grow and change. So what happens when a universe built on one person's amazing, distinct style starts to feel, well, like it only has that one style? What happens when every story, no matter how different the characters are supposed to be, kind of starts to sound the same?
And this is where it gets really interesting. James Gunn's style is incredibly popular, no doubt about it. But it's not for everyone. His brand of quirky humor and heartfelt stories connects with millions. But if every single movie and show in the DCU has that exact same flavor, you're gonna risk pushing away the people who want something else. I mean, imagine you're dying for a dark, gritty, serious Batman detective story, but it's got the same kind of quippy dialogue as a Guardians movie. The whole universe could start to feel predictable, maybe even a little boring. That signature style, the very thing that made the universe strong at the start, could become a kind of creative cage if they're not careful. Okay, so this slide breaks it down perfectly. These are the 2 basic ways to build a cinematic universe. On the left, you've got the DCU's starting plan, the one architect model. The huge plus side, you get a super cohesive vision, everything feels like it belongs together. The big downside, though, is that risk of monotony we just talked about. Then on the right, you've got the MCU's long-term model, many architects. They bring in all sorts of different directors for different projects, a horror director for a scary movie, a comedy director for a funny one. This gives you a ton of different styles and genres. If you don't like one movie, hey, the next one might be totally different. The risk there, of course, is that the quality can be all over the place, and sometimes the universe can feel a little disconnected. The key thing to realize is that DC needed the one architect model to reboot everything, but to really succeed in the long run, it knows it has to start moving towards that other model. And that is exactly where Supergirl comes in. This brings us to part 3, Supergirl, a new direction. This movie, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, it's not just another film on the schedule. It's the first huge intentional pivot away from that single architect model. It's DC looking that monotony problem straight in the eye and saying, we have an answer for that.
And this slide right here, this might be the single most important strategic fact about this entire film. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is going to be the first big DCU movie that is not written or directed by James Gunn. Now, of course, he's going to be producing, he's going to be overseeing it to make sure it all fits together, but he is intentionally, and this is the key word, intentionally handing over the creative reins. This is a massive signal to the audience and to Hollywood that they're saying, hey, this universe is bigger than one person's style. We've built our foundation, and now it's time to bring in some new voices. And just check out the creative team they're putting together for this. The writer is Anna Nogueira, who's known for her work on really character-focused shows like The Vampire Diaries. And the director is Craig Gillespie, which is such a fascinating choice. Gillespie's style is a completely different animal from Gunn's. I mean, think about his movies like I, Tonya or Cruella. This is a guy who is an expert at creating these complex, strong, and often kind of morally gray female characters. His films are sharp, they can be biting, and they feel grounded in a very different way. This choice is so deliberate. They didn't go out and hire a James Gunn light. They hired someone with a totally distinct and powerful cinematic voice of his own. To really get just how different this movie is meant to feel, you have to compare the core origin stories of DC's two most famous Kryptonians. So first up, as this slide reminds us, you've got Superman. His story is, at its heart, a story of hope. He was sent to Earth as a tiny baby, too young to even remember the trauma of his planet blowing up. He lost everything, sure, but he was immediately found by a loving family. His whole journey is about becoming this incredible symbol of hope for his new home. And then, you have Supergirl. And as the slide says so powerfully, she was a child who lost everything, and she remembers all of it. This is where the difference becomes just devastating. She wasn't a baby. She was a teenager who literally watched her world, her parents, her friends, everyone she ever knew get ripped away from her. She carries the full, conscious memory of that horror with her every single day. She doesn't get a clean slate like Clark did. Her trauma is an active part of who she is, and that makes her a fundamentally different, harder, and maybe even a much darker character.
So, what does all this mean? The big takeaway here is that this isn't just about two characters having different backstories. This is a deliberate, universe-defining tonal shift. We're moving from the hopeful, often funny tone that James Gunn is setting up with his first projects to something that could be way darker, more tragic, and centered on a hero who is shaped by her trauma. This is the new creative team being given the keys to go and explore a completely different emotional corner of the DCU. And now you can see why a director like Craig Gillespie, who's so good with these kinds of complicated characters, is just the perfect fit.
And this brings us to our final part, the future of the DCU. Because this is the really cool part. Supergirl isn't just some one-off experiment. This pivot to a new creative voice, it's the first domino to fall in a much bigger, much more ambitious plan for the entire future of the DC universe. It's about building a world that's defined not by one style, but by its incredible variety.
I mean, just look at the game plan laid out on this slide. This is what's coming after Supergirl. We are definitely not getting more of the same. Lanterns is being set up as a grounded, almost true detective-style mystery show that just happens to be set in space. Then you've got a Clayface movie, which is supposedly this tragic monster story that's going to lean hard into body horror. And then there's Lobo, a completely nuts, violent, over-the-top anti-hero story. Every single one of these projects is a totally different genre and tone. This is the proof, right here, that DC is actively building a universe where every new movie or show could feel completely fresh and different from the last. And that's the whole game plan, right there. The long-term success of a cinematic universe isn't just about making a few good movies. It's about keeping us, the audience, hooked and surprised for years, maybe even decades. By bringing in different storytellers, different genres, and different tones, the DCU is trying to create something that feels alive and dynamic, a universe that can keep evolving and avoid that superhero fatigue we all hear so much about. It's a riskier play than just sticking to the same formula, for sure. But the reward could be a universe that actually lasts. And Supergirl is the very first and most important test of that whole idea. So it all comes back to that first big question we asked. This is a massive gamble. DC started with a winning formula, James Gunn's signature style. And now, their first huge strategic move is to deliberately step away from it. The real question is, will trusting different creators and embracing all these different tones be the thing that finally lets the DCU achieve that consistent long-term success they've been fighting for? Is creative diversity the key to their victory? Well, only time's gonna tell. But the fate of this entire approach might just be resting on the shoulders of the girl from Krypton.